this was a conversation. If you're joining us internationally, this is one of our morning shows here in New Zealand. It's called AM because that's fucking original. Right up there with breakfast or lunch. So, I mean, like big hairy news. Come on, that's original. I mean, surely. No? Okay. So David Parker here, Minister David Parker was on. They do this every week. Someone from Labour, someone from National, whatever the name of the deputy. You did notice that they don't even put her name in the title. And I've forgotten it because whatever. George, you'll tell me her name because you're smarter than me, but I forget her name.
Nicola
Willis?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Nicola,
yeah.
well, I'm going to jot that down so I don't seem quite as disrespectful. I don't mean to be. I just couldn't remember. And I like that even News Hub doesn't care to give her a credit mention in their story item here. So Nicola Willis from National, from the right, and Minister David Parker from the left. And they're talking about guns. There's a few things they go through here. I've got a couple of clips to play you. This is not necessarily the first part of the conversation, as you can say, we're already a few minutes in, but this is the part of the conversation where the host, Ryan Bridge, asked Minister Parker, when we had this buyback, so if you're watching from overseas, New Zealand had a buyback of semi-automatic weapons after our horrific mosque shooting. He's asked, did he think the gangs gave back their semi-automatic weapons? Do you think the gangs gave back their semi-automatic weapons, Minister Parker? And this was the start of his response.
Do you think the gangs gave back their semi-automatics?
Oh, that's the question.
I think that yes, in the main.
Really?
You know,
which gangs gave back
there are far fewer semi-automatics for guns to acquire illegally than there used to be because you can't buy them anywhere in New Zealand. The few remaining semi-automatics that are out there are held illegally by people, and when they're found, they're taken off people. So the number of semi-automatics has gone down dramatically in New Zealand.
Do you agree with the Minister that the gangs gave guns back?
No, the gangs...
Just quietly, biggest softball question you've ever seen in your life? George, asking Nicola Willis that question. Do you agree with your opposition that says this?
You can just say yes or no.
No, I don't.
Kept their guns and law-abiding people handed in their guns. And now we have a situation where we're getting multiple shootings a night in Auckland. And that's not okay. And that's actually why National has promoted firearm prohibition orders with search powers for police. We've got to go after the bad people, not just create more rules for law-abiding people.
Are you saying that these recent incidents involved semi-automatics? Because I haven't seen that reported.
No, but guns are guns are guns. I mean,
yeah, I know, but you were the point that was saying about semi-automatics.
No, they're not.
No, guns are guns are guns. That's not what Ryan Bridge asked. Ryan Bridge asked questions about semi-automatics, and the minister said these weren't semi-automatics. And Ryan Bridge went, well, that doesn't matter. They're still guns. Yeah, guns are guns are guns. No.
There's an order of magnitude between a 22 and an AR-15 or an AK.
Let's keep going.
The point that the Prime Minister made is we've taken the worst guns out of society. Yeah, there may be still a few around illegally, but there are thousands and thousands fewer than there were.
Okay.
But when a gun is shot at your house in the middle of the night...
You don't care what it is.
It's a bad gun.
It's a bad gun.
To be honest, I'd rather it was a shotgun than a semi-automatic, personally.
This is what we've come to. We're now defining...
I'm sorry, Minister, for people innocent people who've had their
Why don't they
homes
shut
shot
her
up this
down?
week, they will find that comment abhorrent, I would think.
Well, I told you that I know that the police feel safer now that there are fewer semi-automatics out there. So do I.
But it'd be better if it was a shotgun.
I'm absolutely unforgiving of any illegal activity, especially with guns. But I do make the point, as the Prime Minister made, which is where this started, that we are better off as a society because we have banned and got rid of just about all of those semi-automatics.
Couple of things, yeah? Of course, you would rather someone use a shotgun to shoot at your house than a semi-automatic weapon firing full metal jackets through the wall. However, politics, right? Perception is reality. It was a bad answer by Minister Parker. He did open himself up to being like saying, so you're fine with shotguns being shot. What he's saying is true. If someone was 30 metres away from you using a double-barrel shotgun with buckshot, you would much rather they shot that at you than a semi-automatic AK, as I say, with full metal jackets coming flying at you directly at your centre mass. However, we don't have that gun culture in New Zealand, so most New Zealanders will hear that as Labour doesn't care if our houses get shot. So maybe, whilst I think he's correct in his analysis of what gun I'd rather be shot at my house, not particularly smart politics in my opinion.
I'd also like to bring out the point that I guess I have some personal experience with something like this. As I said, my family grew up on the periphery of the gang, and in the late 80s, there was a gang war in Timaru. And I remember coming home from school to find all the windows in my house shot out in a drive-by type thing. This is something that flares up. And that was when people could go out and get different guns and that sort of thing. But that was a shotgun, or it'd be a sawn-off 22 or something like that. But yeah, we have removed these high-capacity weapons. And just to belabor the point that I said yesterday, the weapons that gangs have, no matter what they are already illegal. And most of the time, they have got them from law-abiding gun owners, people that are not going out and doing the crimes, but you know what? They'll look the other way and take some cash under the table to sell it to someone that they know is a bit sketchy. Or they'll be stolen from a law-abiding gun owner who perhaps doesn't secure their weapon well enough.
And David Parker was
that's the pipeline.
Was making the point, that the Labour government's got rid of some of the nastiest weapons out there. In fact, the weapons that killed 50 plus worshippers in Christchurch. Whereas all National seems to be able to do is bring up gangs every election cycle, right? No matter whether it's a problem or not.
As we go on with this, George, I don't know if you guys have watched this clip yet. I quite like coming to the show if you guys have got clips, not having seen them first, because then you get your natural reaction. But the minister goes on to talk a little bit about what National didn't do and what they have done. So that's coming up as a part of the next couple of clips. Let's look at the next one. Ask the question, do we have more gang members than police? This is what the minister had to say.
The evidence is that the number of gang members is growing a lot faster than the number of police, and I think we are getting to that point in some areas. In Tauranga, they feel a bit outnumbered, and the issue is that we shouldn't have growing gang numbers in New Zealand. We should have police able to go after them. And
just this is the thing we're asking about questions. Yeah, why shouldn't we have that? Why shouldn't we have growing gang numbers, National? What are you putting in place? What will you put in place to stop disenfranchised, vulnerable people feel like they need to get community and be a part of a group? So why is the complete appropriate right answer for that? But of course, this is what we don't like about this kind of media, not this show in particular, is they've got, in fact, we don't watch the end of it, but at the end of it, he goes, I've only got 60 seconds left. I've got more questions, but I've just got time for one. So we'll talk till we're finished, right? So if Nicola Willis was here, I'd like to go, why? What? Expand on that, please. I don't want your talking point. I want your full sentence.
Make it clear, being a member of an organised criminal organisation is not something you can get away with.
David, do you accept that we have a faster rate of recruitment for gang members than we do cops?
I don't know the answer to that, but I find it rather galling, Nicola. When you're in government, police numbers dropped. Since we've come to power, we've got 1,700 extra policemen out there. We've got an anti-organised crime unit that didn't exist when you're in government. So, yes, look, society's not perfect, but we are giving the resources to the police that they need to do their job.
Okay.
So there you go. Another situation where he explains very clearly what they have done versus what National didn't do. And it's a bit, it's a bit galling, if you've got a mate who cheats on his partner constantly, and then he questions your, are you cheating on your partner? It's like, hang on, you've done that and I never have. Why would you question me on that? So I just think it's politics to the nth degree about, if your shit don't stink. There's an old adage, there's an old what do they call it, old wives' tale, that like, why would you take the speck of dust out of your neighbour's eye when you've got a plank of wood sticking out of your own? And I think it's perfect in this sort of analogy.
The language around it is completely whack, because they're talking as if there is a counterinsurgency going on and we need more troops to fight the war against gangs. It's a totally outdated way of viewing, crime and fighting crime, or even that language, right? Fighting crime is totally outdated.
Unless you're Batman. Works for Batman.
We only need one Batman.
They're talking about gangs recruiting and police recruiting as if they're similar organisations. And I mean, there's the old adage that there's the gang in blue in the game as well. But I mean, to join the mongrel mob, it's not like you have to go off to mongrel mob college
for 6 weeks
in Poto, or 6 weeks training before you get your patch,
and learn how to curb stomp.
Yeah. And the thing is that they're cashing in on the fact that middle New Zealand, the squeezed middle, does not have a lot of understanding or sympathy's the wrong word, but understanding of how gangs come to be, the world that they exist in, and what it's going to take to break people away from that life. It's not a nice life.
Hey, and let me say this again. Well, I mentioned this last night. I don't have the article with me tonight, but I have not seen any evidence that gang numbers are increasing. The report that I read out last night showed that there is an official register that has got more gang members on it now, but those gang members might have existed the whole time. They just weren't on the official register. So I want to say I have not seen, because I read a article on the report. I haven't seen the raw report. Maybe it says it differently, but the article that I read, and which cited the research or cited what was going on, said that in this year there was this many gangs on the register. This year there's this many gang members on the register. That doesn't mean there's been an increase in numbers of gang members. That means there's been an increase in recorded numbers. If I own 4 cars and my neighbour knew I had 2, and then they saw my garage door was open, they saw another 2, they wouldn't necessarily go, oh, you've just bought 2 new cars. They just had never logged those 2 cars in their forehead, brain, whatever. You know what I'm saying? They just hadn't seen that.
It's like what Trump said about COVID. Maybe they should stop testing and then they wouldn't have as much COVID.
Yeah. Let's do the last part of this clip from this conversation this morning. They were talking about more about gun violence and this idea of warrantless searches, which raises all sorts of... I mean, it's funny that the party of freedom and the party of liberty and those kinds of guys want to take liberty away to be able to kick down anyone's door when they think there's a reason to do it. Because remember, once you go to things like warrantless searches, that means you can angle into it however you want to angle it and what you need to then be able to do a warrantless search. It was reported that you had an illegal gun, even if it wasn't. So we've just got to be aware that when you give up that security that all of us have, even if you don't think gangs should have it, but all of us have, then the idea of having warrantless searches becomes an issue. And I'll say again, if it's about gangs, then you've got to answer the question, well, what's a gang? And I've had this conversation before when they used to talk about banning gang patches. Well, what's that? What's a gang patch? My local bowling club, with all the old fellas, wear a jacket with a big thing on the back. Is that a gang patch? Are they a gang? Are they a group? What are they? What's the difference between a club and a gang?
Well, then they
Motorcycle
stop
club,
wearing the
gang.
patch.
Yeah.
And then they wear colours. And then we ban the colours.
Yeah.
It's just dumb.
Let's get the last part of this conversation.
But overall, violent offences by gang members are down, but some of this inter-gang warfare is up.
Gun violence is up. 2021, the worst year in the last 15 for gun violence.
Gun violence is up, and by a huge margin, it's mainly between gangs. And part of that, as we all know, is because we've had these 501s sent back from Australia.
Totally. So why not support Nicola's idea of warrantless searches for gang members who've got guns?
Well,
why not support Nicole McKee's bill, the MP who put this bill before Parliament, which would have said, if a cop goes into a gang pad, finds you with a gun, we can take your assets?
Well, there's more than one question there. We actually have introduced firearm prohibition orders so that gang members, can't legally get a gun. We've also changed the law to make sure that if a gun is found in gang premises, you can charge everyone rather than everyone denying, saying it's not my gun and therefore no one being able to be charged. Now, if you're in a premises or even a vehicle where there is a gun present, everyone who is around the gun can be charged in respect of that gun rather than everyone denying responsibility. So we have toughened up on gun laws.
Ryan, the truth is, this government is soft on gangs. My colleague Simeon Brown introduced a bill to Parliament which would have banned the government from providing any funding to gangs. and Labor opposed that bill. This is the same government that gave $2.75 million to the mongrel mob to run a drug rehab program.
The audacity of that, when you dropped police numbers and didn't have an anti-gang unit, we've got both. I just can't know how you can
And the
stand up
gangs
and
are
say
worse,
that.
and you've denied the extra powers for the police.
Okay. Like even there, we could break it down. The gangs are worse. What does that mean? What's your, we say this all the time, George. I love speaking to my lovely friends from America who go, we're the number one country in the world. We're the best country in the world. And what's my response every time? What's your metric for that? Explain to me how you've come to that conclusion. Gangs are worse. Nicola, what's your metric for that? Gangs are worse. And I doubt there's an answer, but there is a headline and there is a talking point. And, we said it the other night, I think it was with Mr. Seymour, they're the gang's best friends, the government's friends with the gangs, national, soft on the gangs. So this is the talking points that you'll hear continuing to come along. Go, boys, if you want anything.
Yeah, it goes hand in. Sorry, Drew, just quickly.
No, go for it.
The militarization of the police that we've talked about in America over the past few nights, some of our viewers brought up, that they buy surplus material from the military, and that this is definitely a phenomena of the war on terror and sort of a paranoid security state. I think we see the same sort of police state tactics, the same sort of surveillance state tactics as the Uruia raids that we had in New Zealand, when we start to talk about warrantless raids on people's homes. Right?
That's a really good point. We've seen, New Zealanders have a tendency to go to think of, it won't happen here and that sort of thing. But we have seen police overstepping their mark in New Zealand with their surveillance of environmental groups, anti-racism groups, as you said, the Uruia raids and that sort of thing. We've seen them be given an inch and take a mile. And that was investigated and prosecuted down the line for years. I think ACT and National running down the garden path and saying, we're going to give them the chance to do warrantless searches is just mental.
I also think this idea, the carte blanche idea of don't give money to gangs, for example. Now, I'm not saying that I think we should give any money to gangs that they want, but what I want my government to do is spend smart money. Now, there may be a situation where the best way to address an issue, like, for example, there was a gang leader in Waikato who was brought by the government to Auckland to try and convince the gang members in Auckland to get vaccinated, because it was best to hear that from within the gang to try and help the gang members understand that it wasn't going to harm them and it wasn't a government that they distrust or a system that they distrust. It was actually going to help them and help their whānau and help those around them. So I'm always a little bit cautious. I'm not saying that I'm like just freely go with whatever. To do a carte blanche, we will not give money to gangs. At some stage, what if that was the best outcome for society for issue X? What if a gang decided that P was no longer the way they wanted to go? Or whatever. So just making those carte blanche statements in the long run, you can deny money to gangs on every occasion, but making a carte blanche political statement based on getting votes and as a kind of trope to your base that we will never give money to gangs, I actually think is really stupid. And I think it's really unintelligent politics.
The thing that the 2.75 million that she mentioned that the government gave to the mongrel mob, that's complete bullshit. It was an independently run rehab centre that, yes, was for mongrel mob members, but isn't that a good thing if we're trying to get mongrel mob members? What's
the alternative? Like stoned up, peed up mongrel mob members out on the streets? Is that a better outcome? That's what National's advocating for.
They've always been against harm reduction, right? They've always been against those sorts of programs.
As I said yesterday, these guys are outlaws. They live on the outside of society. They're not going to listen to a traditional authority figure. They are going to listen to one of their own. They're going to listen to someone who's had the same life experience as them. They're going to listen to someone that looks like them. And if you can get that influence, you know, the money that went to that program that she's talking to that was given to the mongrel mob, it was given to get people off pee, and it was a proven program. You know, they'd done the research, they'd pitched their case, and that was a transparent thing. And I remember National and ACT jumping on that straight away, going, they're funding money to the mongrel mob. But of course, they were watching the program to make sure that it was an effective use of their money. Of course they were.